All right, this is Darlene Jackson, and it's the 20th of November, 2013. All right, so did you grow up in Chicago? Were you born here?
Yes.
Where did you first?
I don't think I could come from anywhere else.
Okay.
Really. I think that something so innate in, like native Chicagoans about the house thing, the house music thing. I don't know. I'm going to say that nobody could really appreciate house the way we do.
Mm-hmm.
That's just my
That's fair.
feeling about it. But yeah, I grew up on the far south side, and it is a community called Washington Heights, which is nestled nicely between Beverly and I guess to the east of us would be Fernwood. It was a really beautiful, like very cool community growing up. A lot of two-parent households, very middle class. Working class people, but who were making a beautiful living, and like big families. Usually, like most of my friends were like 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 kids,
Wow.
out of like that. So it wasn't until I got a little bit older, maybe like, well, I guess there were some gangs, but it was like child's play, you know what I mean? It really wasn't like, there weren't shootings, it was like gangs like fighting in the streets a little bit. And like there was street, like you don't cross that street if you're a part of this gang and if you're part of that gang. Otherwise you just kind of get a beat down. There was no like gunfire. And,
Okay.
it was very idyllic. We were riding bikes, we were our parents, like you couldn't do anything. Your parents would tell your parent like, Darlene has a hickey on her neck.
That's amazing.
Yeah, so it was really cool. I enjoyed my upbringing.
Did you grow up in a musical family?
I grew up in a crazy family, crazy for music. Like my, not necessarily instrumentalists. I guess my brothers and sisters who were much older than I am had music training when they were growing up, and I wasn't around. So I know one of my sisters played the clarinet, and my other brother played the clarinet, and my sister, we have a piano in our house, so my one sister played the piano. She got lessons, and when I was growing up, I was always like, oh, I want to learn how to play this piano, and I would bang around on it and make my own songs up. And my father was like, no, you can't have piano lessons because your sister had piano lessons, and because she didn't do anything with those piano lessons, I'm not wasting my money on piano lessons anymore. So I just used to make up my own stuff. But the thing is that my parents really loved music. They're from Tennessee, and so my mom really liked country and western, and my dad really liked blues, and they both liked jazz a little bit to a certain extent. And then my brothers and sisters being so much older, they had such a wide variety of music that they loved. Like my oldest sister liked singer-songwriters, and then my brothers really liked rock music. Cool. And and then everybody was kind of fans of like funk, soul, disco. So I heard all that stuff growing up. Like we had like the sheet music books with like the Led Zeppelin catalog, like, nice. And so I used to just teach myself, like fingering like these songs and stuff. But my brothers were DJs, so they had a lot of DJ equipment and hi-fi stereo systems in the basement, and so that's kind of like that was where they had their little like lair. And I used to play with their stuff all the time and go through their albums, and like I can just remember just feeling really emotional about music since I was probably like 3, 2. That's probably like my youngest memory, like being like really little, putting the needle on the record, sitting at the bar in our basement and just like looking at this Elton John record with the triple gatefold, and then just like being like completely like, whoa, what is this? There was like all of these illustrations. There was one of Marilyn Monroe, and she had on like a nightie, and like you could see her like boobs, and I was like, this is crazy, whoa, and I just like would look at that, put it away, go back and look at it again, and it had like I remember it had all the lyrics in there, and Yeah, I used to play in their stuff all the time. And they'd come home like, don't play in my stuff. And I would be like, but I didn't mess it up. And they're like, you're going to break it. No, I won't. Because I think they totally underestimated how much I loved it. And if I messed it up, I wouldn't be able to use it, right? So I was logical, even as a babe, as a mere babe.
Where were they DJing?
They DJ'd, like my one brother, he went away to college and he was DJing on the radio at his college. And that was at Millikan University. And then they used to do like the block parties and a lot of local neighborhood stuff, you know. So they would, get their speakers and then, bring their turntables. But that was like my first exposure to techniques. Like they had really good, and then Pioneer tuners and they were like, this is expensive. So yeah.
Cool. So you guys would do like the block parties in the neighborhood? They
would. They're much older than me. I don't know how
you weren't
to,
around
like,
for that?
I wasn't really around like for the funk and disco parties that they used to have. My brother's best friend had a very successful funk band at the time. He used to come over to our house, this guy, Daryl. His band was called Captain Sky.
Yeah.
And so they spend a lot of time together. Wonder Worm.
Wonder Worm.
Yeah. And so they used to play like little concerts in our neighborhood, like in somebody's garage or on the block party or, so they would be around wherever anybody needed music or a hookup or a setup, like they would go and do these events, and I'm sure they used to go to clubs and stuff too. I just was too young to kind of really remember, that I should ask them about that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So what was your first experience like as an adolescent, kind of being, in a music culture or going dancing? Or do you remember sort of like when that transition happened?
Well, I would say my whole community was very music centric. Like everybody loved music. We had this record store, probably like 2 or 3 blocks from where I lived. And everybody would go there and buy your little 45s and, did you hear this song, this new song, or what song came out? We'd be talking about it and, save your pennies or your quarters and go and buy your little 45. So that was like a, ritual thing that a lot of us did. And it was kind of a sad thing when the record store eventually closed, but and I'm not really sure why, but it did eventually. But yeah, I guess I would say, I just remember I used to throw parties, like my birthday parties were events, and so, people would come and then we would dance, like, do you have this new song? And it would just be music from start to finish. Of course there was like Pin the Tail on the Donkey and that sort of thing, but mostly we just wanted to like dance and have a good time. And I would say I can remember my first like really like rockin' birthday party where it was like, we were playing like Ohio Players and all this stuff, probably like 3rd grade. So that's probably amazing. From the time I was like 7 or 8, it was a thing, and then, with other people too, not just me, but I remember definitely by the time we were like in 6th or 7th grade, we were, people were having full on parties, I remember my friend Carla Slay, she would have parties at her house all the time, basement parties, house parties. Yeah. Yeah. So.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
Were you guys watching the dance shows on TV too?
I was. I think everybody was though. But we were, I would definitely get up and watch American Bandstand and get up and watch, Soul Train. And I even really liked, even before that, was like Disco Fever with Danny Terrio.
You were into it all.
I loved to dance. I loved dance and music and song, yeah.
And so there were these like kind of teen parties in like beginning when you guys were like 10 or, younger. Yeah,
and some people's parents were really, like my parents weren't very, very strict, but they were pretty strict. And so, there would be, like, people had brothers and sisters who were older than them, so they would be having parties. And sometimes, younger kids would go to those parties. I remember the first party I tried to go to like that. I swear I was in there for 5 minutes, and then somebody said, Darlene, your mom's outside. And I was like, what? I mean, I was literally I was in a slow dance. I was having a slow dance with the basketball player or something. And I mean, it's a good thing probably she came and got me. She was like, I just didn't feel good about it. I don't know these people. Because it was across the other side. It was on the other side, So, yeah, a lot of that was going on. If you were lucky, you went, I guess. Or I don't know. I don't know how these people eventually turned out.
Yeah.
Who knows?
Could be anywhere now.
Yeah. But, yeah, so parties, music, house parties, dancing in basements. Eventually, that kind of all rose to the surface, right? Because, around 81, 82, house music just emerged. And it was such a force. People were looking for bigger spaces for people to all come together and share their love for this music. So I would say, by the time I was a freshman in high school, it was full on every weekend. Every weekend there was some place to go or something to do. Somebody was throwing parties. People were forming crews, collectives, and putting all their energy into finding a space. Promoting. Creating a theme, creating flyers. Getting them dispersed, and setting up equipment, and creating a space around for people to come and experience this music. And hiring DJs, or maybe that's probably what most of the crews were set up to do, promote the guys that were DJing. So, I know kids in my neighborhood probably started buying turntables. Some of the kids that were real into it, probably by the time they were 12. A lot of kids got their first turntable, the itch for it or the taste for it, or found out about it somehow. Yeah. And then, so by the time we were freshmen, 13 and 14, it was on every weekend.
Which parties do you remember any of them specifically? Were there school dance
Yeah, I used to, my friends and I were mostly going to parties at the Catholic high schools. So on the south side, the big one that people would go, and they were very consistent almost every weekend. You would have a party at Mendel High School. And then some one-off high schools like Quigley South had some, and Luther South, and some of the Catholic girls' schools. I remember going out to way out one time. I forget the name of the school, though. It was in the south suburbs around Dalton or Sibley or something. I can't remember the girls. It was a girls' Catholic school, but all of these Catholic schools were having house parties on the weekend, with the Hot Mix 5 DJs, and some other ones you probably I don't remember. I was but there were some really popular names at that time. In addition to the Hot Mix 5, you'd have Ricky Lenore, or E Smooth, and Dewey Bullock, and just a few other people like that.
Yeah.
And then, people were still doing them in their houses too, but, right. On a more small, very crowded, and hopefully your neighbors didn't complain too much, But, yeah, I remember going still to some house parties too. And then some on the south side, some of the crews were doing things at soul food restaurants, at the Soul Queen, Gucci Productions. I remember them.
Yeah,
I know, and that would be you'd have Farley would be playing, or I'm trying to think who else I like. Oh, and then there was that restaurant Sawyer's. Everybody went to the parties there, and those were really Steve So Curly's spot for some reason. But yeah, it was, even in my high school. In my high school, we used to have sock hops from 4 to 6 or 6:30 in the evening. And Hot Mix 5 would come and play on a Friday. So that was pretty cool. I went to Whitney Young High School.
Nice. Okay. So was the Hot Mix 5 a big thing on the radio already before they started playing these dances, or was it kind of the same time that they rose?
Yeah, it was the same time. So, but I mean, their popularity was almost immediate, And I guess it sort of bubbled up from the underground, but WBMX was real, I would say, forward thinking and saying, this is what's going on with the youth, and this is what they want to hear, and these are the guys that are playing it, and the places, that they're going to see them. and we should put them on the radio. And I think that, maybe Steve Hurley may have even pitched that idea. I'm not really sure who exactly was behind it, but they were on the radio. I just remember we were like 7th and 8th grade, we would have these punk out parties. We call them punk out parties. We would do these on our school, parking lot or whatever. And somebody would bring a boombox, and we would, like, on our lunch break, be like, we call ourselves New Wave, and we would dance to, like, B-52s or, like, Devo or, like the punk New Wave stuff. And then, like, that next year, it was, like, house, so it's kind of like...
The transition was just really quick.
Yeah, but you know what I mean? It was very similar in some ways, It was getting there. It was like, so fun... what is it? Why can't I think of this name? Like Planet Rock, African Bambaataa and Soul Sonic Force.
Yeah.
And then, like, that sort of sound kind of just, it lent itself very naturally to house. And then a lot of the early house records, a lot of the stuff you would hear in the early house sets was also very derivative of the same music they were playing in the hip-hop parties. Like Mr. Magic's Wand, Houdini, and Sesomato, and, like, a lot of that stuff. You would hear that in house sets as well. So I always thought house music was more of like an umbrella for all kinds of music and not just one type of thing, because in a house party you might hear B-52s, and then you might hear Mr. Magic's Wand, and then you'll hear Time to Jack, and then what I mean. It was really about how the DJ was programming it, but the music itself was all over the board. And that's what made it exciting and different. And you never knew what you were going to get. Like, oh, here comes ESG. And then here comes, which is like post-punk, So it was a coming together of all of those types of music.
And when you guys were using the punk out term, was that, did that have a relationship to the Herb Kent show? Like, were you listening to that? Or
you know what? I couldn't tell you, because I don't remember a Herb Kent show about punk out. Was there?
Yeah, he had a show, a punk out show in the late 70s.
Did he?
Where he played that, the Visage and Trio.
Did he really?
Yeah.
You know what? Now, I mean, it probably did.
Or
it
trickled
had to.
down in some way, yeah.
It had to. I mean, because I don't know where we got it from. We were just like, I just remember we used to somebody would try to bring a boombox every day, and it'd be a different person. But then we would try.
These kids bopping.
Oh my God! No, down, 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 like kind of, yeah. That's like, and the teachers would be looking at us like, "What are they doing?" But they were really cool about just letting us be, Yeah. So
it's really amazing. And so, when did you start? Like, did you start going out to Sawyer's when you were in high school, or like those kind of like South Side, like,
Yeah, to the extent that my parents would let me, I wasn't always able to go to those things. And that's why I say they were strict, but not very strict. If I said, I'm going to Kim's house, and then Kim just happened to take us to this party, well, but I mean, it wasn't a whole lot of that. I would say not until I was probably like a junior or senior, But, freshman, sophomore year, I did, get tricklings of, kind of going places.
Yeah.
And, they didn't mind the weekend Mendel things, because most of the time the parents would, it was like a little, like it was like a half moon kind of cul-de-sac. And you drive into the entrance, you drop your kids off, and then they'd leave, and then 4 hours later they come back and drive back through and pick you up. So they felt like it was okay. Also, there were nuns and priests around.
Right.
So it wasn't like some outlaw party that you were going to, in some ways it made them feel good about it. Like, oh, okay, they're just going to dance, And for the most part, we were. Like, I wasn't drinking. My friends weren't drinking. Very few of my friends were, like, smoking marijuana or anything, Like, the kids that you thought, like, oh, they smoke marijuana. Like, they were, like, like, oh, well, he's just that rebel kid or whatever. But it wasn't, like, this thing where you had to go get messed up or people were, like, since, you know, like very serious about buying drugs
Yeah.
and then getting off their face and then, you know, being in this, you know, like
Yeah.
sort of like the rave environment that I watched as after I was older and also a DJ playing these things. And I was thinking like, oh, these are just like the Mendel parties. And I was like, except for the drug component, which is so big. And, and also, you know, the race of the kids had changed, you know, so whereas in the 80s, you know, when house first started, it was a lot of black kids. Yeah. Very few, you know, mixed. I would say it was not as diverse as, you know, some of the raves I have been to or played for. I would say, you know, because it was specific to the South Side, you know, or if you were on the West Side, it was specific to the West Side. You know, I don't know what kids on the North Side were really doing. I guess they were doing some things, but some of them were coming south and some of them were not, you know. The majority of them were not. And I didn't know about a lot of high schools or any other venues on the north side aside from Medusa's that, you know, you could go to and, you know, do what we were doing. So I would say, you know, it was like the transition for me I was saying to myself, like the very first time I had gone to a rave, I was probably like 21, 22, and I was thinking to myself like, oh my God, these kids is just like going, you know, to a Mendel party or something. And I was like, but they're all white. And then I was like, and they're all fucked up. And I was like, why are they so drugged out, you know? So I felt like the purpose was different, you know, the purpose. And then, you know, I don't know. I feel like if the money was going to the, you know, the upkeep of the school and Mendel and the priests and I don't know, you know, I thought maybe that's a more noble cause than, you know, going into the pocket of some promoter, you know, who's also, you know, dispersing the drugs, you know, so, but, you know, no judgment.
It's like those transitions are hard to mark though, like why, you know, how do you get from Medusa's to that so quickly? Right. I think, do you really want to know what I think? Yeah, I would love to.
Oh, well, you know, I think anytime you try to rape the culture, right? So the culture came from, you know, this need for people to be expressing themselves, right? And, you know, black people and gay people and, you know, people who are down with that, you know, with those forces, you know, blacks and gays, you know, they really have no problem being naked. And when I say naked, I mean like with their spirit and with their soul, you know. Their energy is just committed to, you know, acceptance and tolerance and, you know, believe and, you know, just all of these things that inspire, you know, community, you know. So the feeling that comes out of house music made people friends, you know, it broke barriers, it, you know, it made allegiances. And, you know, I guess that, you know, that feeling, I would say it becomes lost when you dilute it. And so on the one hand, it was like people were like not really booking the same people. They weren't going to the same people because you had people now saying, well, I can DJ, you know, but you might be able to technically DJ, but people are forgetting that for DJs, you know, when they have followings and things like that, you know, they have built those things up because there was just all of this, you know, spirit and that kind of came into the play. When you said like, oh, well, I can DJ, and you know, you put your friend on, and then somebody's like, oh, he looks cool up there, you know, I don't know, just I would say something gets lost in the translation. You think that it's about, you know, just playing music, and it really wasn't. It was more about getting, you know, this message from the stars, you know, and putting it out to the people. And that message was basically like, love one another, accept yourself, accept other people, support one another, you know, help somebody, you know, feel good about yourself. You know, it was all of these messages saying like, you can make it and you can do this, and this life is for you, and, you know, don't turn away from it. And, you know, without really those messages being portrayed, you know, to the people, I would say that it became about something else, which was like, oh, let's just all get together and get fucked up, like, which was not really, people were coming to dance, okay? Like, they were like, I had a hard week, and I'm going to sweat it out on the floor, and I would say that mentality had changed. It was totally different, but, it was more like, I'm mad at my parents, okay? I hate my dad. I'm going to get fucked up, and I'm going to screw this boy behind the curtain. So.
Do you remember there being a lot of gay folks in the mix when you were down in the kind of high school scene? Or when did you start realizing that there were gay people at the root of house culture? Because so if you were house, there was a look. You could walk down the street and you could look at people and you could be like, oh, he's house or she's house, or so some people really ascribe to the cultural things, which the way that we dressed, in a certain way that would say I'm house. And then some of the boys that were really house, you could tell that they were also really gay. And so but that's what like made house super there was a little bit of flamboyance, and so sometimes you see them in the day and they didn't look gay, and then you see them at the house party and they were out, and you'd be like, oh shit, like, okay. And then, but it was a place where they could be themselves, free yourself, be yourself, and that's really what it was all about, right? So yeah, I mean, you could see it. There wasn't really like a backlash about it. It wasn't it wasn't like, it was mostly like the gay people were the ones that could dance. Okay. Like, so you kind of wanted that at your party. So nobody was like really like, like there was no bashing, I would say. I'm not going to say like, when I say these things, I don't mean always or never. Right. You know what I mean? The general tone.
Yes, the general tone was that everybody was cool, and straight dudes were friends with gay dudes. Even if they talked shit about them, they were still friends at the end of the day. And if they saw somebody messing with them, they'd probably stick up for them because they weren't, mad at them being gay. You know what I mean? Yeah. It wasn't like, it would be just like, oh, he's, this. But it wasn't an indictment about that. It was just like, if you separate yourself, there were the jocks and there were this, and there were the, and it's, they would categorize people. I was a cheerleader, so, go ahead.
And a house cheerleader.
I was a proper girl and I was a cheerleader. So that's how you were in your category. Yeah. But I didn't really see it as much, like in the Catholic high schools. There'd be some, but I remember when I would go see Ron Hardy play at different places, and there would be a lot, and it would be like, damn, you're gay, like, he's so cute, like, oh. So yeah, I mean, the first time, literally, I literally fell in love with Ron Hardy the first time I saw him play, and didn't know he was gay. And I was like, when I found out he was gay, I was like, come on. It's like, I'm like fantasizing about him. He's so gorgeous, But yeah, I mean, he's the first guy I saw spinning with his shirt completely off, just like feeling it. I was like, I had like just my eyes spinning around, like mesmerized. Okay, like.
Were you a big Ron Hardy follower? Did you go to?
I wasn't a follower because he played like in such outlaw kind of parties that my parents weren't letting me go to these places a lot, unless I was like, I'm going to the library, and then I'm going to Kim's house, and then I'm spending the night, and then Kim would take me to these places. Right. So I have to give it up for Kim Robertson. Without her and her friend Fran, I mean, because they were older than myself and my friends. And I think we were freshmen or sophomores, and they were like juniors or seniors. So they were like, there was like a 2-year age difference, something like that. And so they were driving their mom's cars. They were like,
hooking it up.
Yeah, and they knew everybody. They were popular.
Awesome.
Knew everybody. So, you know, I just remember, like, without Kim and Fran, I would have never probably ever seen Ron Hardy. You know, so I'm pretty thankful for that.
Yeah. Because
I did really, really like his style of play. You know, he was erratic and charismatic and irreverent. You know, he was just off the chain. He had it all, you know, and hot, you know, good looking. Yeah. And, you know, sadly, it's like the people who have all those things going for them sometimes, they just don't know what to do with it all. It's just, it's overwhelming.
Burn really bright.
Yes, right? Yeah. But, you know, left such an impression on so many people. But I knew a lot of people who were really, you know, devoted followers, you know. There were a couple of guys in my high school, like, they were at every party he played and went to the music box just about every weekend. And they'd come to school or not come to school. And it was like, you know, they were living the lifestyle.
So what was the next thing after high school for you? Did you stay around or did you go to college?
I went to college. And then on the weekends not on the weekends, you know, I was in Central Illinois, but on the holidays, all my friends, all my friends went to college. All my friends went to college, you know, like all the girls that I grew up with in high school and all the girls I grew up with in elementary school, then went to high school. We all went to different high schools. And we would see each other at the parties sometimes. And, you know, some of us kept in touch very well. And a lot of them went to the same high schools, but I kind of, you know, set myself apart by going to Whitney Young because it was way on the north side, comparatively speaking, to where we lived. And so a lot of them did not. But we all went to the same parties on the weekends pretty much. And then everybody went to college, and then we'd get together on the holidays when we came home to our parents. And then we were going to clubs because we were 18, 19, and we could. And so none of them really liked to go to Medusa's, not so much. But we did, there was a bunch of clubs on the north side, and like CODs, Coconuts, and AKAs were a couple of the three like hottest places to go. And we were big fans of Little Lewis at the time. And he used to play at Coconuts. And we would go to Coconuts, like New Year's Eve parties, you know, just about every New Year's Eve we were there. And so, yeah, so we would come together and, you know, but we were still like doing the house music thing. But there was, you know, house music was changing and it was getting kind of ravey and a little bit like super fast and less soulful and a little bit different. So, and that's kind of like when B96 kind of came into the picture. And I would say BMX was kind of on its way out, or they had changed their DJs. And the sound was changing, but it was just very dull to me. And then you're at university or whatever, so you're kind of, you know, getting into different things. I was getting into live bands and live shows. But, you know, coming home was always, you know, basically about the same, comforting and, you know, and meeting up with old friends and, you know, kind of, you know, nostalgic.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So when did you start trying your hand at DJing? Is it soon after that?
Yeah, well, no. It's kind of weird because when I was in high school, everybody wanted to be a DJ, including me. And so my friends, who I hung around with a lot of boys. A lot of my boys had equipment and setups at their houses. And so after school, sometimes we'd all end up going to somebody's house and people would, you know, be playing records. And so I couldn't play though, and they wouldn't teach me anything. And so it was like a boys club. And so I had to wait for all the other dudes to leave, and then like somebody would, like my friend Dwayne or my friend Jeff, depending on whose house we were at. After everybody left, they would let me play. And so...
And then we asked why there are no female DJs.
I know.
Nobody let them play.
Do you know how long I had to stay there sometimes to get on the turntables?
Oh, God.
So I know. And it was kind of a running joke with them. Like, I'd be like, let me play. And they'd be like, where are your records? And I'd be like, I don't have any. And they'd be like, you can't play. And I'd be like, you let him play on your records? And I'm like, that's because I know he could play. I'm like, so, you know, so it was kind of like this who's on first thing. But eventually I did start to sort of learn while I was in high school. I just, you know, nobody ever really saw it except for the one dude or who was teaching me stuff. So, oh, I'm sorry. And so, yeah, so I did learn a little bit while I was in high school, right, and kind of forgot all about it. And then after I graduated from college, I came back to Chicago, and I went to podiatry school for a couple of years. And we used to just go to those stupid, like, Division Street bars or whatever. Just dumb. Watering holes, okay? And just straight up, you know, meat markets. But then after 2 years of the program, I left. I was going to take a year off, and I was like, I was hating it. I was hating life. And then I started going to Smart Bar a lot. And then I ran into an old friend of mine, and we just started to date, and he was a DJ. And things got serious. We moved in together, and here come the turntables. So I had turntables in my house for the first time. I was like, and he was always gone. So I just taught myself how to play. Like, he taught me a few things, and he was never really around to test me. So I just kind of did it. Eventually, we moved to another place. We had a lot of people used to kind of come through because he's a DJ, he's popular. We had another roommate, and they had like a band going. They were doing industrial music, and he was a producer and a DJ. But he was spinning at Shelter, and Shelter was a huge club. It was so much fun, and we used to just go there all the time. And I just, like, people come over, and then I'd be playing, and you know, one time this friend of mine, this girl was there, and she was like, "You're so good, you should play. You know, you should play for people." And I was like, "Yeah, you know, whatever, you know." And I hadn't really been doing it, you know what I mean, at all, very much. But she was like, "No, you're a natural," you know. So that kind of happened in the sense that she said, "I'm going to get you a gig." And then I was like, "Okay, whatever," you know. And she did. She got me a gig, and this was like 1995. And so it was in a shoe store, and they used to have DJs on the weekends, and it was a very eclectic and cool shoe store, you know, for club kids. So called Soul Junkies. So I played down there, and she had advertised that I was playing down there, so a lot of the promoters came to see me that day. They weren't buying shoes. They just came to see me, which was kind of interesting. Yeah. And then I started getting booked, like, immediately. And so, I know, it was kind of crazy, and it made my boyfriend crazy. I mean, he did not like it at all. Wow. Yeah, because he had been spinning since he was 12, you know? And a lot of the same promoters he wanted to play for weren't trying to book him. And so it kind of had, you know, this effect of being like, well, you know, I wish I had tits, you know? Yeah. Oh, yeah. He was not, you know, he just had a lot of, you know, issues. You know, self-confidence and self-esteem, you know? So, but yeah, it just happened. And then it was like snowball. Like, I wasn't even trying to be. And then, but once I did it, I really liked it. You know what I mean? Like, once I did it, I felt like it felt natural. It felt, because I was always kind of a performer, always on. You know, I was a child actor, and I did all this TV movies and stuff, and commercials and stuff, and like, you know, but I stopped doing that stuff when I went to high school. I became completely self-conscious, and I was like, I wanted to be a drama major, but I was like, ugh, you know, when I got around other drama kids, I was like, ugh. It's like, I'm so not like them. Like, I was super introspective and really, like, reserved underneath it all. And they were just, all over the place and over the top. And I was like, that's not me. I must not belong there, you know? because I just couldn't force myself to be that way. And I just felt really out of place around them. And so, so I didn't. So I went totally opposite direction, became a science major. And so that was that.
But then you came back around.
But then I came back around because, well, you know, I was still cheerleading, and cheerleading is, you know, about being in front of crowds and, you know, this sort of thing. But, yeah, I think I always felt like I could own the spotlight. And so I think that's when it, you know, being up there, being a solo performer just felt natural. You know, it didn't feel forced. It just felt like, oh, I could do this. You know, and definitely in a way that, you know, like I didn't want to be a doctor. I was like, I don't even know what I'm doing. Like once that year came and went, and I was thinking to myself, now, do I go back to school or not? And I realized that I had gotten depressed, and I was like, I didn't realize that I was depressed, but once you're out of depression, you're like, hell no, I'm not going back to that. like you couldn't force me. I mean, my mom probably asked me for 10 years straight, like, if I'm going to go back. Like, are you going to go back this year? Like,
no, Mom.
Hell no. So, yeah.
So then, like, how did your career unfold? Were you mainly playing in Chicago? Was it club gigs? Was it raves? What kind of stuff were you doing?
Yeah, well, initially it was club gigs, and a lot of the guys who were promoting events here, and there were so many different little clubs popping up, where, you know, they were happy to, you know, just put me on a bill somewhere. I was doing a lot of opening, which was fine. But eventually it became, you know, more than just novelty, you know, to have a girl. It was like people were coming to check me out. So it was definitely it was marketable. You know, I know they were, you know, who's going to book somebody that's not bringing people in, you know, and a girl DJ at the time who wasn't, you know, gay or, you know, a dyke, or, you know, just like they would just be like, is that a derogatory term? I don't think so.
I've heard that in Chicago as like the psycho bitch and Terry Bristol kind of scene.
Yeah. So I'm like, I just don't want to be offensive to anyone, but that's what you say, like dyke DJs, you know. And so to have a girl who was a girl who liked guys, you know, I think that was novel, you know. Because even a few other girls that were DJing at the time, mainly in the hip-hop scene, they weren't feeling like, you know, oh, like maybe I have a shot, you know? So, I don't know. I mean, they eventually found out they didn't have a shot with me either. But, you know, that's because I'm a lady. So
proper lady.
Yes, and I'm always going to be a lady.
And so when did the Super Jane thing happen?
Super Jane happened around 97, and I had been playing out and consistently for a couple of years. And then Colette and Dehoda and Heather were all very close and kind of roommates or living, you know, within the same building or something. I'm not sure exactly, but Colette and Shannon were Dehoda. They were practicing and decided that they wanted to be DJs too, and then they were going to come out and start playing for people. And I guess they had been throwing loft parties and kind of playing at those parties in their own loft party. But they, as far as I know, weren't getting booked outside of those spaces. And then Heather had been a respected, you know, DJ. So she was playing kind of like open format and hip hop at the time. And then she eventually transitioned into house and playing house out in house clubs. And so they approached me one night. They hadn't actually done anything together yet or whatever. And Shannon approached me and just said, you know, hey, we have this idea, and we, you know, I think it'd be cool if it wasn't just the three of us, but if we had a fourth. And, you know, we were thinking about you and thinking about Psycho Bitch, and, you know, I just think you're a better fit for us. And, you know, I just took it all into consideration, and I said, oh yeah, that sounds cool, I'll do it. You know, girl power. Bing! You know, I was like really into girl power. Yeah. I mean, I still am. And I guess you could say I'm a feminist. I do a lot of things with women and girls in mind, you know, about inspiring them. And so, so that was part of what I was thinking, that it would be cool for people to see all of us, you know, together. And then I gave the group more gravitas because I was playing in these clubs already. And I think they had approached some of the clubs and they weren't really taking them seriously. And then when they were like, oh, and Lady D is part of it, everybody kind of said, oh, okay, you know. So that was cool for them.
Used your reputation a little bit.
You know. But it was, I mean, I don't mind elevating other, you know, good women. And that's how I feel it went. And I think people who watch closely, you know, would validate that as well. And, you know, these are my girls and we're still friends, but I think we all have different takes on what really happened. But that's cool.
Yeah.
So
everybody got a different perspective.
You know?
So did that last for very long?
I mean, yeah, we still, like, even this past year, we got together for our Sweet 16. And so we had, we did a date in LA and some dates here in Chicago and in Milwaukee. And we would, you know, we would still continue to do dates together if people, I mean, when we get together, I don't know why more promoters don't do it, because when we do play together, it's really phenomenal. Like you're really pulling all of our fan bases together, and it can't be any more expensive than one Louis Vega party. You know what I mean? Like we're expensive, but not that expensive, and you know, all together, it's totally worthwhile. So I'm not really sure because people go gaga like. We all have our own fans, and when you know, collectively, it's just that much stronger.
Yeah.
You know.
And what would you say that, like, at the time when Super Jam formed, what were you playing out? Like, what was your style like?
My style was like straight underground house, you know. So, I would say it was like I've always loved tracks. I always loved, you know, like beating tracks. But I'm the person who has always had more of a dynamic range out of all four of us. So I could take you like into like gospel territory, you know, gospel house, and come out with some Latin house, and then go into some tracky stuff, and then, you know, kind of bring you back all around, you know, but, you know, with good transitioning, you know, whereas I would say, you know, like I would say the styles, everybody has their own style, but you know, their styles are more straightforward house, you know, and I don't, you know, like I don't think I've ever heard any of them play like any gospel house or, you know, or like get down into some, I mean, they can get a little deep, but then come out with some handbag house, like out and like make it work, you know what I mean? Like I can go places where they don't really go. So. And I think it's just because I love so much music, like so much music, and I get bored if I stay in the same lane. So I can't play like, and then I think I'm the only one that can play like a really deep disco set, you know. So
Are you the only one that grew up in Chicago?
No, Colette grew up in Chicago, on the north side. Shannon grew up in Chicago and like Palatine or something like that, like in the suburbs. But then she was coming to school here in the city. So she, you know, she's real familiar with the city. Heather was born in Brooklyn. And I don't know when she moved to Chicago, but I think she grew up and went to high school like in Evanston. And then, so we're kind of like the four corners. Yeah.
But would you say you're like, your influence in like the early house scene is like a part of that perhaps? Yeah. No, I mean, I think I'm probably the only one that was there. Yeah,
you know,
grew up in it.
Yeah.
All around.
And then because I know like Heather, she probably did get to go to like Medusa's. I know she did. You know, I don't know about anything else.
And so that was for like consistently for a couple years in the late 90s, and then have you just been playing sort of like solo since then? And
as far as the Super Jane thing?
Yeah.
Yeah.
When did that slow down?
Let's see. We were playing like a lot of parties. Like we were doing some monthly stuff and doing, like big holidays, Thanksgiving and New Year's Eve and stuff together. Till about 2000. I had a baby. I got pregnant with my ex-DJ jealous partner. Anyway, we were together for like 10 years, but I had a baby in 98. So even, I DJ'd probably up until about 8.5 months of pregnancy. And then I would say after that, the Super Jane thing for me slowed down. For them, it continued to accelerate. And there was a period where there was like a lot of miscommunication. We just, like they didn't know if I was even going to be a DJ anymore. They did whole interviews where they didn't even mention me. Like I was like some ghost, and that was the whole thing. Not only with them, but like with promoters that I had worked for and stuff before. If you have a baby, there's a little bit of prejudice. You find yourself, like kind of ass out. There's some bias about it,
right?
And so that was eye opening.
Yeah.
But once you're a parent, though, you're like, none of that fucking matters at all. And so
change perspective, walk out.
and so I did continue to do things, solo, and did continue to, raise the bar for myself and for other people, and I would say maybe about 2002 or 3. They approached me with the idea of, okay, hey, we're sorry, we didn't know what was going on. We were young, we were this, that, and the other thing. And, we have a tour that we were putting together and we want to do, and, we'd like you to come back and be a part of it. So I just said, sure, like I'm not petty. So... And so since that time, we've continued to do some things with each other off and on. We've all had solo careers that are, great. And, obviously, and I think, people look at Super Jane sometimes as a lost marketing opportunity because we were like 4 forceful, powerful, independent, and accomplished women who, had we really, really stuck together, we'd probably be like Swedish House Mafia or something, you know what I mean? Like, but because, some egos get in the way, some people have seen moderate success, but nobody's really seen over the top success. Probably, some people, you just don't know. Yeah. But there were probably some missed opportunities along the way.
Yeah. Yeah, that's tough to like,
I mean, you look like the way that they market people now, like Nervo, those 2 sisters. I mean, they're huge. It's just 2 of them. Yeah. It's like, but you go from us who are like, we're like in Spin Magazine, it's kind of phenomenal. And, instead of sticking together like the cast of Friends and saying, no, we all get $100,000 an episode, or nobody gets $100,000 an episode. There was always this feeling like, and I think from a business perspective, I don't know if men go through that as much, but there's this perspective like, no, I got to get what I can get,
Right. Sort of like crabs in a barrel.
Yeah, exactly. Right. So yeah, I mean, I think, but everybody, I mean, to their credit, everybody has grown up, matured, Colette and Heather are mothers now, so I know that they finally get it, that it's not what you think it is. You think like, oh, well, why did you get pregnant? Why did you have a baby? You know what I mean? Like,
Sometimes that.
Yeah. But being a mom is the best thing I've ever done. It's really, really rewarding and very informative, and it's a treasure. It's a joy, and I'm glad I did it. You know, especially when I did, because now he's 15, and I feel like, you know, I'm still going. You know, nothing's really changed. I'm glad he's not 2. You know, like 2 was rough, and you know, like I kind of feel for Colette and Heather because they're, you know, much older than I was when I had him, and I'm like, it's not easy even when you're young. You know, like I'm like, she's, you know, so I'm like, wouldn't want it to be me. I wouldn't want to be doing it now, but I'm glad for them because it's, you know, I just want them to know what it's like. Motherhood is great, and maybe Shannon will have a baby. We don't know. We don't know. She's still a wild child. You know, she's always been our, you know, resident hurricane. You know, she's just.
So have you seen the influence of like either your own career or the Super Jane stuff, like really, how has it touched like women and girls that you've come into contact? Has it been interesting to see that effect?
Yeah, you know, when we were at our prime, I think more like around 2000, 98, 99, 2000, there were so many girl DJs popping up then. I mean, there were a lot. And they would be like, yeah, I love you, you know, like, you guys inspired me, you know, or be like, yeah, I saw you at a rave and I told you I wanted to be a DJ and you said you should do it. Like, I mean, and this was the time when, you know, I would go places, I'd be signing autographs after a rave, you know, like kids were really, really into the, you know, DJ as, you know, rock star kind of thing. And I definitely, I mean, not even just girls, but boys too, you know, like, you inspire me to, you know, pick up the decks, because they were probably saying, like, if she can do it, I can do it.
So, well, but you were just great. So they just were moved.
So, yeah, so boys and girls. And I think that's when I was also starting to get in, well, a little bit later, like maybe the mid-2000s, I started to get involved with Girls Rock Chicago.
Oh, yeah.
And so that was really fun, you know, just seeing little girls and showing them what I was doing. And I mean, I would just look into their faces, and most of them were like, what is she doing? Like, their eyes would be so big, not necessarily out of amazement, but just confusion. Like, who is this alien, and what is she doing? Like, but then there would be some girls that were a little bit older, you know, they would come up to me after, like, I would do, like, a little seminar or something, and they'd be like, oh my God, can you show me something else? Can you show me something else? Or, you know, because I always bring my little handouts and, you know, here, you know, I let them play. And, you know, some people always think it's just fun to just, you know, to the turntables or whatever. And, but then there are some who are really inspired by it. And definitely, like, the more I did those sort of things, those sessions, you know, with the girls' camp, the more I realized, well, the more they started getting kind of requests for more of that, you know. So from the girls, like, they would do a survey at the end of camp, and they'd say, what did you like the best? Oh, you know, I wish you had more on the turntables. I wish you had more on the DJing thing. So eventually, that's when they approached me and said, you know, could you possibly do a whole week of that? And I was like, yeah. Like, so I put together a curriculum, and then, you know, so I've been doing that for like the last 5 years.
That's amazing.
Yeah, it was fun. It's fun. And they do 2 camps a summer, and I've gotten other, like, initially I used to do the whole camp week myself, and then I think it was because I was afraid to ask people to volunteer their time,
right.
Like, because DJs are either drunk or high or sleeping in late, or you know what I mean, like they just don't have daytime lives so much, and camp starts at 10 or 9 or something, so. But eventually I just started, like, I got a list of all the girl DJs I knew, and I was like, wrote them all, and I just said, who wants to be, you know, who's with me?
Who's on my team?
Yeah, so, and I was really surprised by the response I got, where people were like, okay, I can do this day, and I can do this day, and it's just a couple of hours commitment in the morning and then again in the afternoon. So I've been pleasantly surprised with the number of girl DJs who still exist, who would, you know, give of themselves to teach other girl DJs, other young girls, principles of DJing, not even DJing. I mean, what are you going to learn in a week?
Right.
But the principles of self-confidence and performance and, getting over performance anxiety and, just little things like that will take you further in life, that if you can accomplish this, you can accomplish anything, At the end of the week, they perform for all of their peers. And, it's like 18 bands, and then like 4 DJs. And so they open the party and they set the tone for the whole thing. And, throughout the week, I'm just giving them these type of life lessons, that really don't have much to do with DJing. They do learn to DJ though.
You better learn that.
Like, okay, that wasn't good enough. And I'm pretty hardcore.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's amazing. Is there footage of that? Do you guys have like documentation?
You know what? Yeah, people do come in. They do have people that photograph and people that come in and do a little bit of video. So yeah.
When we'll talk about this off the thing because I'm very interested. Very cool. Is there anything else? I mean, we are at just over an hour at this point, and sometimes these things can go for like 2 hours. Sometimes it just depends.
Okay.
But we've gone like through the arc of the career and sort of touched on a lot of the early stuff.
Yeah, because I guess I'm not necessarily one who has a ton of like great memories and I have great memories, okay, but I don't have a lot of like amazing stories, like a lot of the things that we did and the things that I experienced are just up here, and like for me to regurgitate them, feels tough. Redundant and it feels a little tough. I mean, if you asked me very pointed questions like you did, like you sort of knew a little bit about my background. Yeah. And so when you can get in and get specific with me, I can helpful. Really go in. Yeah. Yeah. But I did this documentary the other day. And,
how'd that go?
I just, it was such generalized questions that I just felt like my answers were so generalized too. It's like, what is house music to you? Like, I hate that question. Like, I know, and it's really hard to answer because I'm not in the place where I was 10 years ago. Sure. Where I was like, house music is everything, it's my life, or whatever. Once you have a baby, I'm telling you, you're kind of like, shit changes.
Yeah, like, this baby is everything.
Okay, right? I'm like, and I wish, somebody could just go back and find interviews that I did, way back then, because I was definitely more inspired and definitely more, able to articulate these things about what is house music. I mean, I had a zine that I used to produce. Yeah, nice. I started my own crew, like For Soul Only, and that was me and like 6 other dude DJs. Okay, wow. And I was their queen bee. You know what I mean? Like I was running the show. And from that, I started producing a zine called For Soul Only. And it was kind of like, our little rave thing. Like I bought a big copy machine, put it in my loft, 4 blocks away from here, and did the layout and everything. I interviewed, like Sneak and Ralph Rosario and people that I knew. And I was getting promos from like Astroworks and I was writing reviews and I was doing all this stuff by myself on hand, right? And then like I give it to my dudes and like go distribute these. And, all of our parties, I would like compile them, put them in like this crazy little envelope or something, and then we would promote ourselves that way. Like this is where you can find all the FSO DJs and our little after hours and the events that I used to throw. Like I used to throw this event at Shuba's of all places, right? But it was like from 2 a.m. to like 6 a.m. Wow. Yeah, or 8 a.m. or something like that. It was like, it's called AM, all music, all morning. And then we would be DJing. People come be eating pancakes and stuff and dancing. Amazing. And like, the boys would come from Berlin down the street. And then, people would come from, Shelter or wherever club was closing at 4. Yeah. And it would just get packed. And, I did that, but like these are like small things in the chink, like people, and like, unless I tell you, I guess you wouldn't really know. Yeah. But the people who lived it, they know. And so, it was a lot of stuff going on back in the 90s and early 2000s that, I guess gets looked over. There's a whole, like popular crew and clique, And then there are people who were just doing things in the underground, you know. But I guess and me, I kind of moved between both of those places.
Yeah.
And that's kind of how I think I've always been, like in high school and everything, you know, like you might see me with the cheerleaders and the jocks one day, and then you see me with, you know, some of the emo people out on the, you know, the you know, just punking depressed out. Kids, yeah, punking out, or, you know, the theater people or whatever. And then, you know, I just kind of moved between all of the different crews and cliques. I got along with everybody, and that's the way I've always been. But yeah, I guess, you know, in this thing, I've earned my place because I've always been a bit of a leader and always had people who just trusted my judgment and respected me. I didn't sleep my way into, you know, my position. You know, I had a few relationships with people, nothing, you know, crazy, you know, and in a very limited basis, but, you know, long term though, you know what I mean? So I didn't have the opportunity to, you know, become familiar with a lot of people. So I earned my name, you know, I earned my position, and I didn't have to do a lot of craziness, you know, and I think that's why people still, you know, respect me, give me my props to a certain degree. It's like, you know, even if you didn't like me, you know, I have longevity. And it's like, and then after a while you kind of realize, like, oh my God, you know, like people, initially I used to hear this thing like, you know, nobody's that good. You know what I mean? Like, I was just too good, you know? I'm like, no, I'm not that good. I'm just consistent, you know? I'm sensible. I'm a moderate, you know? So you're never going to see me fringing out, you know? Like, I had fun, trust me, I did, but I did it in a reasonable way, you know what I mean? Where people aren't going to say, like, oh, she's, you know, she's a drunk, or she's a druggie, or she's a this, or she's a that. Like, you know, people always say, like, I respect you so much because you're a mom and you still have a life, you know? And I'm like, yeah, I do, because you can't be a good mom without one, you know? I'm like, I think and if you, for me, I had to have that, you know, balance where I had a career. My career happened to be really, you know, taking off as a DJ. And in between, I was doing other stuff, you know, like freelance writing and just freelancing in a lot of different ways, but mostly like writing, proofreading, copywriting, you know, advertising stuff. And, you know, but you wouldn't, I mean, people who are out at night, they don't see you during the day. So you could just kind of do whatever you want, really. But, you know, raising a kid on your own, you know, eventually I became a single mom, you know, when my son was 1. So raising a kid on your own, you have to be resourceful. And I made a lot of contacts, and I was sure to try to minimize making a lot of enemies, you know. I think I've been accused of being heavy-handed and also expensive, and, you know, I'm like, these are things that people would not say about guys. For the most part, you know, I am a tough negotiator, but I always felt like I'd rather walk away from something than diminish my worth. And, you know, and that probably made people think like I think too much of myself, but I still feel that way. Like, I don't want to take something that I know that I'm better than, you know. And I mean, and it's never like, I do so much free stuff and charity stuff, so it's not about the price, it's about the value and what you can afford generally, because I don't overcharge people who can't afford it, but people who can afford it need to come with it, you know. Don't nickel and dime me, like, that's crazy. You know. So I've always had to be like, you know, my business hat and my creative hat, and wear them both equally, and then just try to navigate, you know, whatever else is going on in between all that.
Yeah.
But
what inspired you when you were living 3 blocks from here to form the crew? And
yeah, because I think I formed that crew because so some of my guy friends who were my brother, Javon Jackson, he's not really my brother, but he's my brother, you know. And he claimed me as his sister a long time ago because we have the same last name, and we grew up in the same neighborhood, even though I didn't really know him when he was younger. And he's a couple of years younger than me, but he really taught me how to DJ, like really taught me like a lot of the principles. Like he's a historian, and he would come and tell me stuff and talk to me, and we would share stories, but he would tell me about the principles about DJing, you know. And then he'd leave me with my turntables, and he'd say, now play. You know, and then I would have to play, because he played for hours. Sometimes he played for 8 hours straight, like in his room, 10 hours. He'd just come out and eat, water and stuff, and then go back in and continue to play. He'd work on his mixtapes, and he would be recording himself. And if he didn't like that he did something, he'd start it all over. And this incessant kind of, so he taught me this work ethic about being a DJ. And then he wanted to play more, and there were a couple other guys like him that used to come and hang out at our loft, and him and DJ Freak, and then I was really good friends with Mark Grant and E Smooth, and my ex Mel, who was, he's just a really gifted DJ and producer. He's just suffers from addictions, so he just hasn't really cleaned up his past, and he has a lot of issues, but still he's a very talented DJ, and still kind of working around the town. And I just people, because they respected me, it was easier for me to be like, hey, I'm gonna go and book this party, because these boys, they didn't really know how to talk the business stuff. They just wanted to play because they loved it so much, and I was just like, I could wear that other hat. So they were like, I would be like, yeah, we should throw a party. And they'd be like, yeah, you should. And
I'll be there.
And I'll play. I'll play for you. And I'd be like, what? And they'd be like, yeah, go and talk to them, because they'll talk to you. Like, really? And once that realization kind of came about, it was kind of like, all right, cool. Then you're my crew, and this is what I want to call it, and this is what we're going to do. And they were just down with that plan. I was like, I had a business plan and the players, and they were like, okay, let's do it.
Cool.
So that's kind of how that happened. It was, I didn't know if I wanted to have a crew, but I knew that I could have more power if I had people. You know what I mean? Javon was a respected DJ, but on a personal level, like, they just knew him as a fun party boy. Like, he liked to have fun. He'd be at the party drinking and blah blah, but he played hard, powerful, and great sets. And Freak the same way, but they're boys. Boys can play, boys can play and get away with it in a way that girls can't. So I would be there, and they knew if you called me in at the end of the night, I wasn't going to be too wasted, and I wasn't going to miscount the money and all of that stuff. And so, yeah.
The secret underbelly of houses, the women are running the game.
And you know what? I think we might, because when I go into almost any club in general, there's usually some woman around there doing everything. Yeah.
The shadow labor.
Sad, but true.
Was the zine a kind of labor of love, or was it a strategy for the business?
That's a good question. I wanted to get in. And the zine at that time, I guess it seemed like, it was a way to really document what was happening. And because I always wanted to write and always was a writer, like a published writer since I was like 6 years old. So I think it was a way for me to combine all my talents and loves together. And I only did 4 issues. I don't think I even finished the 4th one. I think like 2 definitely came out. The 3rd maybe in a very, very limited way. And then the 4th, I remember I was working on it, and I was like, fuck this shit. And I was getting really busy DJing, and I was like, I can't do it all. Yeah. I'm not a superwoman. So yeah, I think that was literally like a quarterly for 1 year.
Gotta get those. I want those.
Yeah, you want to see them? You know what? I'm gonna try to find them. I'm sure some people have them too.
Yeah. We'll track some down.
And some old mixtapes or something.
Yeah.
I remember my first mixtape. That was awesome.
When did you record it? Do you remember when you recorded it?
1996. I recorded it in my loft. I just, we used to just make them in the daytime, like press record and start playing, So But I remember thinking that was the first one that I thought was good enough to give away to people.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I had recorded myself many times. I never liked it enough to, you know, give them away.
To dub it.
So that was the first one that I think I sold a gramophone and everything.
Wow, cool.
Yeah.
And so, like, tell me about the Smart Bar scene back then.
Smart Bar. Like, I had started going to Smart Bar probably, like, when I was 19 or something. You know, I had fake ID and I would just go up there. It was always a dance club, and they were playing some sort of mix of house, you know, and they were, you know, they used to have sawdust on the floor. It was like house mixed with industrial, and, you know, it was always a really cool scene, always pretty diverse, you know. I didn't see a lot of prejudice at the door, you know, like there was no unwritten door policy like you can't come in if you're such and such, like Shelter had. And so so that was always a fun place to go, especially being underage, you know. But then once I was older and could go legally and was going and then began to play there, that was even, I would say, like it even became more diverse then. And that was one of the things I always loved about Smart Bar, was just that, to me, it was the most diverse place, you know, because gays and straights and blacks and whites and, you know, Jews and Gentiles, and, you know, the whole house anthem, you know, that was all, you could find that all there. And because they really embraced house there in ways that some other clubs did not, that was always really cool, you know. Between the Tuesday nights, you know, they had like Mark Farina and Derek Carter and Doublemint Twins were doing their parties, and, you know, then, you know, Super Jane, we had our residencies and our nights there, and but they played, you know, they let everybody come down there and play, from Boo Williams and Glenn Underground and Mark Grant, and, you know, so they really took the house community as a whole and gave, you know, everybody a platform from which to play. And I would say, you know, they were just the most progressive, you know, because, you know, some places were cliquey, or you know, some places were, you know, primarily, you know, just for certain communities, you know, but this place was, you know, very, you know, much for everyone. So
yeah, I'm very interested, you know, I'm looking at Queen as like a case study, and it's like it just seems like the bar's been running for so long, and, you know, it's one of the only places you have like a famous black gay Chicago DJ holding down a residency in the city, right? You know, so Derek is still playing there, and it's got a certain spirit to it, you know.
Well, you know, it's the spirit that came from out of the Boom Boom Room ashes, and so, you know, Boom Boom Room was really that place where Boom Boom Room was really the most diverse party in Chicago for a long time. When it was at Red Dog, it was definitely, you know, that was the place. I mean, where you literally, it wasn't, see, a lot of people kind of get it twisted, right? That it was a house party for gay people, but it was a gay party for house people. So, you know, it was really like the gay party, and then they just let everybody else come, okay? So it wasn't the other way around, where they were, you know, like we were letting the gay people come. No, we were coming to their party, and you wanted to come to their party. It was the bomb, you know? And so, you know, as it moved venues and stuff, it changed a lot, but when it was at Red Dog, it was the most pure party on the north side that you could go to for house music and for diversity all in one. So, I mean, it was LGBTQ, everything, you know, so it was good.
And did it end because of any particular reason? Do you have a sense of why? I've heard people talk about it as though it's still there's still a Boom Boom Room. Yeah,
because there is still a Boom Boom Room, but it's not the same. It's like whatever. It's like you're just trying to capitalize off some other shit, you know, and that's like it's wrong, you know, and that's why it's not nearly as good, you know. Should be better if the true spirit was there, but it's not. And then they moved it to Monday nights, and, you know, Boom Boom Room. They moved it to Sunday nights, and Boom Boom Room was always a Monday night thing. So that should tell you, like, 600-800 people on a Monday night all going out, going crazy, and it's because it was just that good, This Boom Boom Room, they're lucky if they get 60 people on a Sunday night.
Do you think that Chicago, as a city where people go out, has changed, like, appreciably?
Oh, yeah. I mean, it's sort of like jazz music, right? It's just, it's for old people.
Yeah.
House is like, I mean, that's one of the reasons why I rarely go to the South Side to party or to go to events. Like, I make a few exceptions. I have gone to Bang a couple of times with Terry Hunter, and I will go to Reynolds for Mike Dunn. And I've been to a couple other things, but I don't really want to speak of them because my impression and interpretation of Southside Party is a lot of fat, like overweight, old Black people looking to hear classic house, and like they won't progress. They won't like if I went down there and somebody asked me to play down there, I would just get out my old records because they don't want to hear anything new. They want to hear stuff that Andre Hatchett has made popular, and he kind of plays the same stuff over and over again. I mean, he plays some new stuff, but it's all in one lane, like vocals and happy house vocals, like Whitney Houston remixes and I don't know. Could be better. That's all I'm saying. Like, it used to be such an avant-garde thing, house, right? Like, it was so edgy, and it was always like the new, the next. And then as people got older and disconnected from it and kind of went towards hip-hop, then they came back to house. They wanted to come back to 1986, house. And it's like, no, we're over here, like, playing in Germany and stuff. Like, dude, this is not what we play now, like you tell them, like, come to the house party, and they come and they're like standing around looking like, what is this? And then they finally find their way, like, back to like a Terry Hunter or somebody like that. But they love him because he was playing, Capricorn and I Need Love, and like making them relive what they had already been through, So I would say their progression now, they are progressing more than they were, I would say, 4 or 5 years ago. I was, like, it's like beating, a dead horse, these parties. So I would say, I should not really characterize them that way anymore because that's not necessarily accurate. The overweight and old part is...
That's just life.
But, as long as they get down, but like, they generally tend to have like only 1 or 2 steps, it's like 2 steps. They do that 2-step thing, and I'm like, come on now. But, I love my community, to be honest with you. I'm glad that they saw hip hop a little bit for what it was, and eventually kind of came back because, there were a lot of us carrying this torch, carrying it on, and kept it moving and progressing when they were not, when Shelter was turning away Black people by the dozens, who just wanted to come in and dance, and, there were still those of us who, had to come in, who were let in or whatever, and had to still carry the torch for, Black people saying like, we love this music, we're behaved or whatever, it's like, you had to kind of represent something, it's like, and eventually they began to let in more Black people, but, it took too long.
Yeah. It
took too long. And by the time, they decided, oh, we, do want your business, or we do want you here, most of the Black people had given up on coming to the North Side to go to parties. And what was happening on the South Side was, this full-on embracing of, rap and hip-hop music. And I like rap and I like hip-hop, but it's not the type of environment, for most women, back in the day. It wasn't really. It was very much, a testosterone-driven, type of energy. And you couldn't really, I couldn't get down with it. Even the parties on the north side, it was just like, I go into a hip hop party, I'd be like, okay, 20 minutes of this, I gotta go. Like, these dudes are too hard, they just, they lack a certain respect, and that was one of the things I always felt in house music. I always felt respected, even if somebody, touched my bum the wrong way or something, I could grab their hand and I could say to them, hey, you don't do that, I'm a woman and I'm a lady, and, and I would get an apology or something, I'd get a, somebody could see that there was somebody speaking to you sincerely, and they could, connect with you on that level, and, and realize something. At a hip hop show, they'd be like, fuck you. Like, oh, fuck you, bitch, you stuck up. Oh, so it's like this whole different mentality they were coming from. Yeah. And, I think, that's why I think, having gay people and straight people together in the same room, it's all coming from a place where, there has to be some sort of, like, there's just a what do you call it? Like some sort of happy medium, where you can't really, like, even if it's a, guy dressed as a woman, he's still a guy sometimes. He can just kind of pull up that energy, like, of like, you're not going to mess with her, as opposed to, everybody being like, yeah, fuck you, hoe.
Ooh, yeah. No, it is an energetic thing. Like, what kind of, a lot of people talk about house in terms of like the idea of softness, like a masculine energy, but it's a softness, right? Yes. Like Malik Youssef in the Steve Silk Hurley documentary that he made a couple years ago.
Oh yeah.
That's a really nice thing about that. It's like, it's like the way I am with a woman when I'm learning something from her, or with my son when I'm teaching him something. It's like, and I feel like that spirit it's ineffable almost. Like, it's very hard to hold and tell people about, but you feel that.
Right. And I know I used to do a lot of training, and I do call it training, in the club sometimes, because sometimes somebody would get in who hadn't been to the club before, hadn't been on the north side before, and like was bringing that like certain mentality to it. And, and I might let them dance close with me, and then they might think, oh, she's easy or something, and they might get a little too close, and then I would educate them. And then the next time I saw them at the party, they'd be totally different, and they would be more respectful, and they would be, like more in tune with the surroundings, And so I always considered myself like a trainer, an educator. I'd be like, because you don't come in knowing,
how would you know?
How would you know? Exactly.
You become socialized.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And that's what I do feel like. Today's clubs, there's nobody teaching club etiquette. There's a lack of club etiquette,
Right, yeah.
And it's like, God, and I'm like, well, first of all, my training days are over because I'm not spending every waking moment in the club.
Yeah.
I used to club like 7 days a week,
Yeah.
Yeah, I wasn't a mom or anything.
Yeah.
I could sleep till noon. Who cared, So, but yeah, no, I don't know what's happening to clubbers today. I don't know where direction they're going to go in.
Right.
And I know that house is a loving art, but it's a dying art, and the house person is a dying breed. It's sort of like the Matrix, right? It's like there's this underground Zion, right? Then above ground is like just what is going on, It could save, somebody. There could be somebody that saves the world, but I don't know if, life is like that.
Right. Well, no, this is so much at the root of this project for me. Is like what, we learn so much. Where does the knowledge go, right?
True.
But yeah, I think this might be a natural sort of ending point for us.
Okay,
I think.
good.
Yeah. No, we got a lot in here.